Douglas Chapman.
Thank you, Ms. and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Following on from the shipbuilding debate we had yesterday and the expected statement from the Secretary of State later today, although that's now in some doubt, this is turning into a bit of a defence fest this week. But this is an important debate at a time when defence is very much in the headlines. So I thank the Honourable Member for Aldershot for bringing this to the floor of the House today. This is a very important issue. But it's also a very complex area. However, the bottom line is that there has been a significant drop in the size of the armed forces since this administration came to power in 2010. While there are many ways you can play around with the figures and the numbers, the broad overall figure suggests that from April 2010, the full-time trained and untrained total strength of the UK Armed Forces was around 97,000 personnel, and by April 2017, that same figure stood at 157,000, which is a drop of some 21%. The overall, in the same period, those serving in the Royal Navy alone, the figures in 2010 were 39,000 and 2017 33,000, which represents a drop of 16% in full-time trained and untrained personnel. The other figures for the Army and Royal Air Force are equally depressing. But according to the most recent figures covering the last 12 months, the net outflow from all three services is 2,740, and the figures, even if they were to remain neutral across all three services, would need to start attracting some 15,000 new recruits every year just to stand still. This is a tall order and has been done against a background of increasing cuts that have been taking place since 2010 to 2015, a real terms cut of some £8 billion, or in percentage terms, 18% of the overall budget. While I know this administration are trying to reverse this trend, a lot of the damage has already been done and has been made worse by some slow, delayed decision-making, cloudy strategic thinking and poor value for our tax pound in some of the procurement projects. The very fact that we are to get a statement today, hopefully, which according to the Times will see yet another defence review pushed into the long grass for perhaps another 6 months, tells its own story about this administration and the legacy that they're having to grapple with. But I must say it's a legacy of their own making. All this does not have a positive impact on recruitment and retention at a time where skilled engineers and technicians can find that there's more money and a more stable family life to be experienced in industry and commerce rather than serving in the armed forces. A recent report from the Pay Review Commission highlighted that people are joining up not for a career but to be trained to a high standard before moving on to industry. And they may be made in the Royal Navy, but they're progressing in their career and enjoying family life in Civvy Street. I'm happy to give way to the Minister.
Minister.
It's a very good-natured debate, although the SNP always cannot resist. But on the subject of retention, can I simply ask him what assessment he's made now on retention, that some 45% of service personnel in Scotland will be paying a higher rate of tax than their equivalents in England?
Douglas Chapman.
I'll come to that later in my speech and be happy to answer on that point. However, the Armed Forces, just to continue, the Armed Forces Continuous Attitude Survey of 2016 reports that morale of self, unit and service has also decreased, with 61% of the serving personnel thinking that morale was low and 9% perceiving that morale was high. Other members have, across all sides of the chamber, have mentioned that in their speeches. And again, it's a serious issue in terms of making sure that retention is high up the government's agenda. Housing as well, and other members of honourable members have mentioned this as well. Housing for serving personnel has always also been a long-running sore, and while I believe this minister is honest in his desire to see genuine improvements in housing quality and the extent of repairs and so on, can he give the assurance today that the short-term collapse of Carillion changes nothing as far as Forces families are concerned, but in the long term changes everything to do with the quality of the build and the maintenance of Forces families' homes in the future? Finally, if I can perhaps surprise the Minister by ending on 3 positive points, we invite the Government to scrap the public sector pay cap to follow the Scottish Government's lead by introducing a pay rise of up to 3% for public sector workers, which in this debate would include all Armed Forces personnel and have a positive impact on retention and morale. In Scotland, many lower paid personnel will also receive a tax cut, as Scotland becomes the lowest tax part of the UK after April this year. I would also recommend that he looks very seriously at the Commission headed up by my honourable friend, the member for Glasgow North West, in terms of the pay conditions and how we can extend a better family life for serving personnel in the future. And just to finally finish on a point that might be of interest, small nation Denmark decided to increase her military spend by some 20% last week to help meet new threats and to continue her international obligations. If a small independent country of 5 million people can increase their defence spend by that amount, why not the UK?
Here.